Hello everyone and welcome to today's edition of Books and Looks. Today I want to share with you one of my favourite books that I've read recently. It's Frans de Waal, I'm not sure, Our Inner Ape. So this is one of the world's leading primatologists, and that sounds boring. It is the most incredible book I've ever read. It's so touching and tender and speaks about us as a human species and how actually really similar we are to the different apes and monkeys. Oh, that was a bit of a mistake. Actually, he's quite clear at the start of this book, and I've learned so much from it, that actually we are very similar to bonobos, which are a little cute little furry thing, and chimps, and maybe less similar to orangutans, although I do have such a soft spot for orangutans. There's a lovely David Attenborough documentary where he's hanging out with some baby orangutans, and they're just the cutest little orangey fluffy things. Anyway, this book focuses mostly on bonobos, and wow, it's a very story-based book, so nothing too scientific or dry. It's incredibly charming and very thoughtful, I would say. I'm really looking forward to reading other books by him. And although this book is mostly looking at life through the lens of his life as a primatologist, actually this book is really about humanity. And I think especially given the current situation in the world today, we can learn a lot from our fellow apes. He writes, "We are capable of such savagery, despite or perhaps precisely because of our ability to imagine what others feel. On the other hand, when that same ability is combined with a positive mindset, it prompts us to send food to starving people, make valiant efforts to rescue complete strangers, such as during earthquakes and fires, cry when someone tells a sad story, or join a search party when a neighbour's child is missing. With both cruel and compassionate sides, we stand in the world, our two faces looking in opposite directions. This can confuse us to the point that we sometimes oversimplify who we are. We either claim to be the crown of creation or depict ourselves as the only true villains. Why not accept that we are both?" And I think this book goes on to explain sort of some of civilization and some of humanity through this idea of looking at, as he says, the best and worst of human nature in order to in order perhaps to understand ourselves more deeply. And at the moment we do have such polarization, such binary thinking in society, and perhaps sometimes we do need to, as he said, accept that we are both. I never thought that I would be interested in reading about the sex lives of apes and bonobos. But oh yes, in this book, it's amazing. I have to confess, when I was little, the monkeys in the zoo were always quite intriguing. Cruel as it may be, you know, it was a product of its times, perhaps. And I remember they would have like the monkeys' tea party at the zoo. And I was always intrigued by the monkeys and the apes and the bonobos and the cute little tamarin monkeys. But also quite disgusted by them and their red bottoms, you know, showing off proudly. So I was always quite intrigued by them, but also quite disgusted by these creatures that would go around parading their red bottoms. You know, it's a little bit sort of embarrassing as well, isn't it? So this talks about the power hierarchies in the ape world, and obviously juxtaposing those with ideas of what goes on in the human species. And he does look at us as a species and looks at issues such as homosexuality, sexuality, spirituality, all sorts of things through the lens of the apes. Look, there's a whole chapter on the monkeys behind. He also talks about the preferences of the chimps and says how different it can be sometimes from human beings. Sometimes we think it's natural, for example, that males in our species might prefer younger females. After all, they've got greater fertility and mating and reproductive facilities. So on one level, you could say that that's perhaps understandable. But soon he poo-poos it, suggesting that we've got various apes and chimps who actually prefer the more experienced female elders, we could say, and find those much more sexually attractive and experienced. So voila, take heed everybody. How fascinating. But really what I love the most about this book is the way that he manages to share his stories, which, as you know, I think is partly what life is all about. There are such touching stories, one that I remember in particular, where one of the female zookeepers had left the chimps for a while. And he says that if you're going to be a zookeeper, you do have to have this balance of like empathy and emotional, EQ and understanding, but also a harder side because they will try and get around you. They're quite sneaky little creatures. He talks about how some of them had learned, for example, how to get over the wire fences, or recently there was a story in the newspaper about some apes making love through a tiny hole that the zookeepers hadn't noticed through two enclosures. But one of the more touching stories in the book, of which there are many, I was in tears sometimes, was how one of the zookeepers, a female zookeeper, who had watched many of them grow up and had worked with them every day, she'd left for maternity leave. And when she came back, of course, they were all delighted to see her, and they were whooping and cheering. And then she came with her baby, and she took the baby, if I'm not mistaken, it was to one of the elder apes, and was looking at her through the enclosure. And she turned to face her baby towards the ape so that they could look at each other face to face. And the ape disappeared off, ran off. And the zookeeper says that she was worried that, maybe she was somehow disconnected from her because, she was jealous, maybe because she had her child. And instead, the chimp went and got one of the ape babies and bought it and turned it and faced it so that it could see the human baby. So the human baby and the ape baby were looking at each other face to face. And just these beautiful, touching moments of pure humanity is what this book is all about. And if you don't mind, as you know, I do these videos at the start of my morning before I go to work. So today I'm just going to pop a little bit of makeup on while I'm thinking about these gorgeous apes. Oh, this is a new purchase. It's a little case from this brand, Beauty Effect. I got it in Phoenix in London, and it's quite fab because it's got the lights on and of different effects, different lighting effects, warm light, cold light. Now it does tend to get quite dark in here in Paris in the winter. Thank goodness spring has sprung. So this box just offers a bit of brighter light. As you get older and maybe your eyesight isn't quite as good as it was before, especially when it gets a bit darker. It also comes with a rather terrifying magnetic magnifying mirror that you can just click onto the screen so that you can really see your skin. Because I was noticing I've got an older neighbour in my block, Madame Flory. She's quite amazing. I remember one day going upstairs and she said to me, "Oh, we live in the Japanese quarter. I've never had sushis. Would you like to have sushis together?" So I went to Takara, which is a great Japanese restaurant just here on Rue Molière, and I got sushi takeaway, and we shared sushi together, and it was her first experience, aged 80 something, of sushi. So I thought that was just quite magnificent. Life is about new experiences, right? And how incredible that an elderly French lady wanted to share this new experience with me. I felt very privileged. Anyway, so it can get quite dark. So this box is really great for the winter time, and it's got like a mirror inside and magnifying properties. Oh yes, the reason I was talking about Madame Flory is because sometimes I'd see her leave the apartment and she'd have like really quite profound, we could say, blusher on, almost like a Japanese, Japanese geisha, this very pale skin and then incredibly sort of orangey red blush. And in retrospect, I sort of pondered on this and wondered whether it was because the apartments are quite dark, because the street is so tiny and it's all higgledy-piggledy. As I said, this building's from the 1700s. So, it's just different right now. Times are different now. Although we've got big windows, there isn't so much light coming through due to the narrow streets. So I wondered if it was because of that. Anyway, so I went out and got myself this box in a moment of vanity. Another new acquisition in my arsenal towards not looking quite so apish in the morning are these Jones Road Miracle Balms. I've been dying to try these, and I know that some of you have been asking me what I thought of them. So I've got this sort of dusky pink colour that's called Flushed, and it's just ever so gentle. Now when you first use these products, you can see I've already used it, you sort of have to break the seal. It's got quite a waxy, heavy, it's got quite a waxy feel to it. It's quite firm, it's not like a soft cream, which makes it, you know, it doesn't break up, it doesn't crumble, it just kind of stays put, which is quite good. For me, the only drawback with these is that the pots are quite large, which is great because it means they'll last you. But for me, for travel, they're not so great. They're a little bit too heavy. As you know, I like to travel as light as possible after my days as a stylist for magazines, lugging clothes around the world. So you can put a little base on if you want, you know, for me, I'm okay today, I think. Can you see it's quite a gentle pink, and because it's a balmy texture, it sort of blends into your skin a little bit and sits on top a little bit. You can feel it on top of the skin, that's what I mean. It's not like a dry powder, it's got quite a moist finish, I could say, which is great, especially if you've got drier skin like I do, and that many of us get as we get older. And you can see it does just give my face a little gently flushed, quite natural, I would say, feeling. And you can also pop this on your lips. Quite nice to start a day like this. It does wear off quite quickly on the lips, so I will have one of my trusty lip balms that change colour in my handbag as we go along. Voila! So you can see it's just quite a natural pink flush. At least that's how I'm thinking it looks. And then I also bought this one, which is, of course, I'm addicted to sparkly things. This one is called Magic Hour. Oh, what a lovely description. And it's got a little sparkle to it. I don't know if that shows the texture of the sparkliness. You can see as it catches the light, it just sparkles. Now the sparkliness, and again, it is quite moist. This one, the speckles of glitter are not huge, but it is quite a pronounced sparkle because it's on the wetter side, and it kind of sits a little bit blending into the skin, a little bit on top of the skin. It's quite comfortable. You can also use it all over. That's why it's called a miracle balm. You can also use it on the eyes. I use it here as a highlighter. Even here on the Cupid's bow, and I tend to use it quite high, almost going into the eye bags here, really on top of the cheekbones, on the eyelids. Like I like to use it here in the corner of my eyes, just like that sometimes. And you can see I'm already quite glowy because I just did my skincare regime. But voila. So what happens is as you're outside and the sun just sort of catches your cheekbones, they are quite, they do just shine quite beautifully. I think this is a great product. I did try their mascara and it flaked all over my face. That's not to say that will happen for all of you, but that wasn't my favourite product from the line. But this Miracle Balm is quite fantastic, and it does tend to last throughout the day, but just not on the lips. And today I'm feeling a little bit shiny on my nose, so I'm just going to use a little bit of classic Guerlain powder with this big fluffy Tom Ford brush that I've had forever, and I absolutely love it. I think it's great to invest in this sort of quality products like these brushes. I find this one quite glamorous as well. It's like a dark chocolatey brown, and again, it just makes you feel happy as you're using it, right? Et voila, now I'm ready for the day. I'm going to look up my little box of joy. You can keep your makeup inside it, it's quite brilliant. And I'm going to head out for my day. I could tell you countless stories from this book. It is absolutely incredible and just so beautiful. And I also highly recommend the Jones Road Miracle Balm. Have a lovely day, everybody. Thank you for watching. Au revoir, à la prochaine, bye bye.